Welcome back to another JP DeRose edition of the 5CAST. I'm Mariko Izumi. Last week on the 5CAST, I threatened WFN for letting JP host again. But after talking with my agent, my entertainment lawyer, and my accountant, it appears that I'm getting paid whether I host or not. So go ahead, use JP all you want. I'm going to use this time to negotiate with some Hollywood producers. Steven, Mariko Izumi here. Let's talk Jurassic Park 4.
One of my favorite places to fish for largemouth bass has got to be in weed-filled bays. What we got back here is a back bay situation where you've got a ton of weed. And what these bass tend to do is they end up hiding in these little dark pockets inside the weeds. What we've got is a slop mat, and there's holes, and basically that slop mat creates a canopy for these bass. And what you do is you take anything that's Texas rigged, and by Texas rigged I mean rigged weedless, where the hook is buried into the point of the plastic, and you take that bait and you would just naturally flip it into the cover, nice and quiet, let it fall to the bottom, shake it around, and you dunk repeatedly through all these holes. Sometimes you end up getting a giant bass because of it. Another phenomenal place to fish for largemouth bass are boat docks. One word of warning, if you're going to flip a boat dock, be sure you have lots of practice. The last thing you want to do is walk up to a boat dock and hit your lure off the side of someone's very big investment. So what I can recommend is going to your backyard, practice your flipping. Flip into a cup into the backyard. Get really good at it. Once your target's really good, come here, check out the shaded sides of docks. Docks with wood pilings, lots of overhead cover create shadow. And when there's a big old boat sitting next to it, it's one of the best spots to catch a largemouth bass. One thing about largemouth bass you gotta understand is they love cover. They will get into the thickest, nastiest stuff you can find. Perfect example, right over here. Submerged trees. Trees that have blown over in storms create amazing cover for largemouth bass. And a lot of times what you'll find is they'll tuck themselves way up into the back of these trees, using it as an ambush point. My lure of choice is either a flipping jig, a Texas rig craw, or a Texas rig worm. And you want to go up to these trees really quietly, take your time, get in there, and make a good pitch into the darkest cover you see. When you look at a tree, look for the dark spots. The dark spots indicate it's got shade and depth. And that's where those bass will hang out, and you can get your biggest fish of your lifetime out of one of these babies. One of my favorite things to flip for largemouth bass, the scummiest, nastiest looking slop mats you can imagine. Now what this is basically a product of all the boats that have been driving by in this area, cutting up all those weeds, and it blows right up against the shore with the wind. What you have here is an umbrella for bass. This is basically an overhead garage for them. Provides shade, cover for them, cooler water because they're out of the sun. And even though it might only be this deep underneath there, it can hold some real monsters. One of the big tricks to fishing slop mats is they're not real hot early in the morning. When the sun gets on them, they start warming up and the water goes up a bit, these can be dynamite ways to catch big bass. Again, Texas rigging. I can't stress the importance of Texas rigging your plastics. By Texas rigging, again, I mean weedless. You cannot get an open hook through here. Don't try throwing a spinnerbait into this stuff or anything else. You need a Texas rig plastic. And what you do is you just basically flip out and find the holes. And flip that bait into the holes and let it slide right in. If you're nice and quiet with it, and you get the bait, you can throw it on top, drag it across the top, and then let it slither right into the hole where they live. What we have here is your classic deep weed bed. Deep weeds, I mean anything from 6 feet all the way down, to 10, 12. I've seen them as deep as 20 feet. One thing you got to realize with bass, deep water nearby is a great advantage for them because they can escape predators. And when you get a cold front situation or the fall time comes, this is the first spot that they're going to pull off into. What you want to do is fish them vertically though. Don't attack a weed bed by spinner baiting it or anything like that. It's great in the early morning, but when the fish hunker down in the weeds, this is my lure of attack. A flipping jig. Flipping jig, flipping craw, or a worm, Texas rigged, 1/2 ounce minimum weight to get down to the bottom. What I'm sitting in here is basically an 8 or 10 foot weed bed. And what you do is you take your bait, find a hole in the weeds, and drop her straight in. Let her fall all the way to the bottom, let out your line. When it stops falling, you lift up, and you slowly jig it and let it fall back into the hole. One good thing about using a flipping jig is the rattles that are in it. You shake those rattles, and if a fish is in a different section of this weed bed, he'll just swim right over to it and eat it. This is a great way to find some big bass all year long, but especially come fall time, because this is when they sit in these things, they school up, and they put the feed bag on big time.
Sure, Quentin, of course I'd be available for the Pulp Fiction sequel. You'll just have to meet my contract demands. Hello? Yes, this is Mariko Izumi. Well, I'm not sure what Mr. Spielberg considers to be threatening phone calls, but you tell him I'm too busy hosting the 5cast to be in any of his movies. Please don't fire me.
Clothing provided by Storm Tech, official performance apparel of WFN, the World Fishing Network.
Hey YouTubers, if you want some more Mariko, check out our weekly 5cast on WFN.tv.